teen librarian at the Clinton-Macomb Public Library, and in this video we are going to do a beach tutorial, and it's actually going to be a little bit of a mixed media. So to begin with, supplies that you want, you definitely will need a round brush, a very small one for details. You want about a 3/4 to 1 inch brush, and that will help us do the background. You're going to want a pencil to help us delineate between what is going to be the ocean and the sand. And then these are the colors that we're using today. So I have here my just cadmium yellow, just my bright yellow. This brownish, orange, reddish color is burnt sienna. Then we have yellow ochre, which is more like a mustard yellow. We have our white, our black, and a blue. And if you only have a blue that's lighter in color, your mixing will be a little different, but this will do as well. Okay, so our very first step is actually going to be to use our pencil to delineate the line between our what is going to be the water and then the beach here. So you want to start about 1/2 inch down and just kind of drag this across your canvas. It's going to be kind of in waves because that's how the water kind of works across the beach. And you want to end about the same place, so about 1/2 inch from the bottom. So now you have your canvas split. Let's see if I can get that a little closer. From one side to the other. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and wet my brush just a little bit. Of course, you're going to need a cup with water for your brushes and then some paper towels as well. So I'm going to take some of my dark blue, so this is our first mixed color, and some of our yellow, and mix that together. And that's going to be the first color for our water. Now we want this to still look pretty blue, so if it looks a little too green, add some more blue to it. I'm going to see what this comes out. I think that's maybe slightly more green than I want it to be. I'm going to add more blue. Okay, so we're going to have 3 colors across this water. Alright, so let's test this out. I'm going to start in the top corner and go ahead and just kind of crosshatch. Make sure that your canvas is covered. We want this to be, if we need to do a second coat, we'll do a second coat. This actually looks like it's coating pretty well. So, and it's almost like a deep turquoise. I think it's really pretty. And because this whole thing's kind of a triangle, we're going to go down about here. We're going to put our second color in, and then closer to the wave line, we're going to put in our lightest color. So I'm going to kind of just make a kind of a line for me to follow so I know where I'm filling this in. And just filling that in. You have a little bit of blue or yellow on your brush, that's fine. You can incorporate it into the painting. I like doing my edges. Although I hate getting paint on my easel, but alright, so I'll just go over everything, make sure that this is nice and covered, and then we will make our second color. Okay, so that looks good to me. Our second color is actually just going to be adding more yellow, so we have more of a green tone. So this is more of a bluer turquoise, and now we're going to move into like a more green turquoise. Yeah, let me just bring this in a little bit closer so you guys can see kind of the color and like the texture that it creates. And let's add some more yellow. Yep, it's looking like a really cool like green color. And we're gonna go pretty far on this. I might add in a little bit more of our deep color. So I didn't mix all of it. I still have a little bit left. So I'm just gonna add some of that in. Okay. I think I'm going to now take a little bit of the first color I made and kind of go over the spot where they touch. So and pull that down a little bit more so there's like more of a gradient. Kind of gonna mix it in a couple areas. Oh, a little piece of dried paint. Okay. This is coming together. I think I want to just add a little bit more blue. Mix in with this. And then for our final color that's going at the bottom, I'm going to rinse this off just a little bit. Okay. My water is a really pretty turquoise right now. Okay, so the third and final color, you're gonna take the green color you made and add white. I think because this is pretty green, I'm gonna add a little bit more blue to it and then add some white. And we wanna lighten it up with the white so that it looks more like sea foam. So like that is kind of the color we're looking for. All right, let's put some of that on. And you want to go along the edge of your, and it doesn't have to be perfect. If you want it to be more detailed, you can also do this to follow it and then paint. If you want it to be really detailed and actually follow your line exactly, I would take your round brush and make the, go through the line with your paint. So this painting makes me really happy in particular because green and blue are my two favorite colors. And I also really love water. I've always wanted to do a beach painting. So I figured summer's the time for that. So after this dries, we are going to be painting like the white caps on the edge. So don't worry about that. We'll be adding more detail to our water. And then we're going to try to mix this in a little bit more with the previous color we've had. So it shouldn't have dried completely. So just kind of try to mix the edge in. You can even paint up a little bit. I'm liking it. I'm liking the kind of like layers of color. All right. If you can absolutely play around with this if you want more of one color showing. If you want more of a gradient, you can play with that. I think I might be adding a little bit more of the green in. So I was adding the blue in, but I'm going to add, I think, a little bit more of the yellow and blue so that we have kind of like a mixed color in between. Okay. There we go. I think that's a better transition. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. We're going to go ahead and rinse our brush off, and then we're going to do the sand. All right, so my brush has been sitting in water for a couple minutes. I'm gonna rinse it out, and we're going to be doing the bottom layer of the sand. So the sand's gonna have a couple layers to it. This bottom layer is gonna mix 3 colors together. So make sure you can get a new brush if you have one. If not, you want to make sure that you get all of the turquoise color out of your brush. So our next color that we're going to be using for the sand is a mix of, we're going to be using some burnt sienna, some yellow ochre, and a little bit of black. It's going to be the darkest color of sand. It's going to be the undercoat. So let's take some burnt sienna. If it's really thick, you can add a little bit of water to it. And then you want a little bit of black. If it's beginning to look a little too black, you've added too much black. So that is definitely too much black. We're gonna have to add some more. I'm gonna go ahead and get this damp too. Alright, I think the better route to go for this, I'm gonna go ahead and mix my burnt sienna and yellow ochre. And then once we got kind of a sand color, I'm just gonna add a little bit of black. Yeah. This is just the undercoat, so don't worry if it doesn't look quite right. It's got a little bit more black in it. We just want to make sure with this base coat that we don't have any white showing. And it doesn't really matter what your strokes look like because it's sand. So sure to get the bottom of your canvas. You can always flip it upside down. And fill in right next to the water. If you want to do the same thing and do a line, make it easier on yourself, you can. It's okay if you paint a little over the blue. We will fix that. Alright, so we're gonna let that, just gonna cover my tracks, make sure all the white is covered. And that looks like sand, right? Alright. Okay, so this is going to be mixed media, and since we're adding some sand and shells in our next step, you can follow along. If you are not planning on adding sand and shells, you can still do the painting aspect, and then you can actually paint your shells and your sand, well, the texture that will come from the sand. So let's see here. You need this. And what we're gonna do is use the sand color we were using before, and we're gonna add some white to it. A little bit more yellow to that, a little bit more burnt sienna. Add a little bit more white, I think. Just gonna add all of this in. And I'm liking that color. Okay. So now over the sand, because we're going to have the sand be our texture, we're not going to worry too much about what the paint looks like since we're putting the sand on top. But if you are creating your own texture with paint, you'll want to pay attention to the stroke that you're making. But basically, we're just going to tap this because we want some sand to stick to this. Okay. If it looks a little too clustered, you can always get your finger in there and kind of move it around a little bit. You can add more white if you would like, and add another dimension of color. So, add like a little bit. If you really want to make a smaller impact, then you can use a smaller brush. A sponge would be really good for this, if you have one, like a kitchen sponge or a sea sponge. Okay, so we are going to do the line, but I'm going to go ahead and put some sand on this. So this will be interesting. This is the challenge. Here is I'm going to just set this on a container and sprinkle some sand on. Hope that some of it sticks. So I'm going to move this around a bit with my finger just to see if there are spots that I painted that do not have sand attached to it. So just kind of like lightly move the sand around, hope that it finds a home in the paint. And we're laying it flat and doing this also because we want to give the opportunity of the sand to dry a little bit against the painting before we tilt it back up. And then we'll have any runoff of any extra sand. It's always better to put less on and then add if you feel like you need more. I feel like I poured a little bit more on this side, so I want to kind of sprinkle that out a little bit. Make sure that it doesn't look too clustered in one spot. I always like a painting where you can get your hands actually in the paint. One of my favorite paintings we did was a finger paint, and that was just really fun. I did wear gloves, but then at the end I kind of got my fingers in there, so. Alright. Okay, I feel pretty good about that. Alright, moment of truth. How much sand falls off? Wow, I don't see any sand falling off. So I must have done a good job. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and bring my easel back and set the painting back on here. So the sand was a success. We do have some shells that we're gonna put on, but I think I'm going to do that at the end. So the next thing you wanna do is do a little bit of a color along the edge of this. And we're not making it perfect because we're going to have to go over it after we put in the white caps in the water. So you can use a smaller brush if you want. Honestly, I think that would make better sense for what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to go ahead and take out my flat brush that I have and use the color we're using plus a little bit of black. And we want to give it a dark color because it is, I think I have a couple little dried, there we go, dried pieces of paint on the tip of my brush. And then just lightly go over the edge. And again, it's okay if you were, we're going to be adding the white next, so the white will cover any mistakes that we're making. Okay, a little bit more paint. And a little bit of water because my paint is super thick. Let's start at the top here and go. Alright, so you can see we have a darker delineation right now, which is great. So we're going to work on adding texture to the water. So a sponge would be great for this because you might not have one or you might not have a foam brush. I'm going to try to use my flat brush to add texture. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse it off. Feel free to change out water as much as you need to. My water's looking pretty brown right now. Okay, so I'm going to get some white and I'm going to try to get as much off of the brush as I can. I'm wondering if we want some foam, so I am going to fling a little bit. Usually use this for stars, but I do want to get some sea foam. And I'm going to need more white, get the excess off. I don't know if you can see that, so I'll hold that closer to the camera. And then we do want spots. I think I'm going to do that a couple more times, but we do want spots where the foam is like thicker. So I'm going to test that with my flat brush, see if I can make that happen. Okay, one more time. Then I think we should be pretty good with our little bits of sea foam. Some of this is going to be painted over, so. Okay, so then with just a little paint on your brush, we're going to make just a few little dabs. And this kind of creates the texture that we would get from a sponge. Just add a tiny bit of paint each time you're doing that. You don't want to overwhelm your brush with paint. Okay, there are going to be some waves in here and some white caps towards the water, so I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's looking good. All right, so let's. All right, so now we're going to want to get a little bit more white on our flat brush, and we're going to look at kind of the pattern this created, and we're going to kind of like make some waves with it. Don't worry about this being too thick. We want it to be like so that it stands out. I'm going to do some on the other side. So over here, looks like it starts out. Maybe do that. And then I'm going to leave this gap open, and I'm going to create maybe a wave here in the center. So you got some different waves going on. If it looks a little too faint, just paint over it a little bit with some more white. Okay, I just added this right here at the top, and we're gonna add our foam. So starting at the bottom corner, and you want this to have some texture. So if it's pretty thin like mine is, you're definitely gonna want a second coat of this. Now it is going to go right up to the sand, but I'm going to paint that last. I just want to add the foam. This is going the whole way across, so. And you don't want it to be completely even. You want some spots where it spikes out a bit. Gonna make one here. So that's good. Okay, and then I'm just gonna go towards the water line with the foam. So I'm gonna be pulling out from the. And you want to kind of fix blobs of white. You really want to see the texture. So do not be afraid to use too much paint here. Especially towards the line between the surf and the sand. All right. And add some more paint. All right, gonna start here, go down, pulling. Let's see. And even if your foam isn't a perfect line, that's okay. We're going to do one more delineation line on the sand. So now you just want to go through and fill in spots where you can see too much of the water. You shouldn't be able to see too much blue. You want it to look pretty white, as seafoam does. Add some texture. Just gonna add texture to a few more places, and then I'm pretty happy with my seafoam. I might want to even go out a little bit more. Now, I will admit this white paint is going to take a while to dry because we are laying it on pretty thick. All right, I think that looks pretty good. Definitely make sure you have some dips in there. You don't want it to be the same like size throughout. I made some high points. There's a couple low points in the water. So, all right. So now we're going to go ahead and add in that shadow beneath the foam. So I actually think I have a color that's going to work. You actually want to do brown and black together. This one is kind of dark. I'm going to move it over to my mixed color from before. And we do want it to be like a pretty dark brown. Okay. Because it's thick, I'm adding some water so it'll be easier for me to spread. Okay. Get off all these little chunks. All right. So we're going to be careful of your white. I kind of left a little hint of this so that it would be easier for me to go back and do this shadow. And I say be careful of your white, not because you shouldn't paint over it, absolutely paint over it, but it's still pretty damp and thick, so you don't want to kind of start dragging into it. You don't want to get white on your brush. And it doesn't have to be a perfect line. Mine is kind of going in and out a little bit, which if you think about your original line you created, that's kind of what you want it to look like. Actually, I should be doing this with my round brush, but to get a smaller line and more detail. I think because I'm using a bigger canvas, I'm okay with this being a little bit bigger. The canvas I am using today is an 11 by 14, which you can certainly use bigger, but a lot of the times we use either 8 by 10 or 9 by 12 size canvas. So this one is a little bigger than what we generally use. But in the tutorial I learned from, there was an even larger, I think she was using a 14 by 17, and just even grander if you can imagine it. All right, so that's a little bit thick, but that's okay in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so basically our final steps are, because this is mixed media, we wanted to add our shells. Now, if you don't have shells that you can add onto your painting, you can absolutely paint them on. And that is really what this line and painting on shells and rocks and things like that on the beach, it's really what the round brush is for. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back down, lay this back down onto our cup that I had planned it on. Now for this, because these shells unfortunately are not going to stick like the, might have to do a couple under here. There we go. Not going to stick with just paint. I do have a little cup of glue, and you can use, this glue happens to be water soluble. I'd actually prefer not to use water soluble glue because if your painting were to get wet, then your shells could fall off. But water soluble glue is better for when you're using a paintbrush with glue. So alright, and my brush has a little brown on it, which is no problem at all. This glue is completely clear and will dry clear. And I have, it looks like a sand dollar and 3 starfish. So go ahead and get those out. They're very fragile, so I have to be very gentle with them. Okay, this, I have my first starfish. And what I'm most nervous about is obviously it's not completely flat. So I'm hoping to coat enough glue on there that it will stick. And place it right there. All right, I'm gonna do our sand dollar next, our gorgeous little baby sand dollar. Put it closer to the center, I think. And I'm being very generous with this glue. I'm not too worried about it. I want to make sure that the back is evenly coated. And I think I'm going to put the sand dollar about here. Press down a little bit, make sure the glue touches the canvas. I have 2 more starfish I'm putting on. And this one has a broken arm, as they do. Hopefully I didn't do that. I'm going to stick it here. Oh, it stuck to my finger. I'm going to, if I can, put some more glue on it. Never too much glue for this project. That's what I'm thinking. Oh, it actually flipped upside down. So I need to get it to go. Excellent. Oh, I had it the right way before. The other good thing about water-soluble glue is I'm getting it all over my hands, and that is a good thing for being able to wash it off your hands. All right, I think that one is going to stick for sure. And then I have my final one, and I think I'm going to do that towards the top of the beach. Put some more on. Okay, great. I think it's completely covered. I'm gonna put it here. Awesome. Okay, so I can rinse that off in my water. It's water-soluble glue. And put my glue lid on. I'm gonna go ahead and let this dry for a while, and then we'll test it out and hold it up. And that's it, other than if you want to add any more, any other details. Okay, moment of truth has arrived. I've dried this for about half hour, and success! I have successfully put my shells on the painting. So, very cool. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video and enjoy painting as much as I did. Thank you.